My son was the happiest kid I knew. Then, over 2 years, I watched him disappear a little at a time, and I didn't understand why, until the night I found him on his bathroom floor. This isn't an easy story to tell, but I promised myself if I ever wrote it down, I'd tell it honestly, because I think about how many parents are living exactly where I was a year ago, not seeing what's right in front of them. If that's you, please keep watching. My son's name is Eli. He's 14 now. This story starts when he was 12, right after he started middle school. Before all this, Eli was loud, genuinely obnoxiously loud, in the best way. The kid who'd narrate his own video games out loud, who'd burst into the kitchen to tell me some fact about sharks he'd just learned, who laughed with his whole body. He wasn't the most popular kid, but he had 2 close friends from elementary school, and honestly, that felt like enough for him. He wasn't trying to be anyone else. Middle school scattered that friend group across different schools. Eli landed somewhere new, without either of his 2 friends, and I remember dropping him off the first day, thinking, he'll make friends fast, he always does. That's what I told myself anyway. For the first month or so, nothing seemed unusual. Kids are quieter when they're adjusting, I told myself. New school, new environment, give it time. Looking back now, I can point to the exact week things started shifting, because I still have the calendar from that year. Early October. That's when Eli started asking to stay home just this once, more than once. That's when he stopped mentioning any names from school at all, not even complaints, just silence where updates used to be. I want to be honest about something, because I think it matters for other parents watching this. I just didn't understand what it meant yet. I didn't find out the full picture until much later, mostly pieced together afterward from Eli himself, from a few of his teachers, and eventually from his phone, with his permission once he was ready to show me. It started small, the way these things usually do. A group of boys in his grade decided, for reasons that still don't fully make sense to me, that Eli was an easy target. Comments about his weight, mimicking the way he talked when he got excited about something, turning the exact thing I loved about him into a joke they'd perform in the hallway. Small stuff that said once might roll off a kid, said every single day for months, it doesn't roll off, it accumulates. Then it moved online, which is the part that genuinely still keeps me up some nights, because it meant there was no version of home that was actually safe from it anymore. A group chat Eli wasn't even part of, screenshots forwarded to him so he'd know what people were saying. Fake accounts making fun of a video he posted of himself singing, something he used to do just for fun. Something he stopped doing completely by December of that year, without me ever noticing he'd stopped. I want to say clearly, I did ask him if everything was okay. Multiple times. How's school? Everything good with friends? And every time, he said fine. I believed him because I wanted to, and because he was good at sounding fine. I understand now that kids get remarkably good at that particular performance, when they think being honest will either worry you or make things worse. By January, his teachers started reaching out. Not about behavior problems, just small notes. Eli seems withdrawn in class lately. He stopped raising his hand. I brought these up with him gently, and he brushed them off as just being tired. I didn't push. I regret not pushing more than almost anything else in my life. I'm going to tell this part carefully, because I don't want to describe anything in detail that doesn't need to be described. What matters isn't the specifics of what happened that night. What matters is what led there, and what came after. I'd noticed Eli had been in the bathroom longer than usual. And something, I still can't fully explain what, just a feeling, a mother's instinct maybe, made me knock, and then knock again when he didn't answer right away. I found him in a moment of crisis, having hurt himself. I called emergency services immediately. He survived. I need to say that clearly and early, because I know this kind of story can be hard to sit with. And I don't want anyone watching this to spend the next several minutes bracing for a loss. He survived, and he's here, and he's doing better now. And that's why I'm able to tell this story at all. The hours after are honestly a blur I can barely reconstruct even now. The ambulance, the hospital, sitting in a hallway not knowing anything, a doctor eventually telling me he was stable. What I remember clearest is sitting next to his hospital bed once he was awake, and him looking at me and saying quietly, "I didn't want you to find out this way." Not, "I didn't want to do this. I didn't want you to find out this way." Like the secrecy itself had become its own separate, exhausting weight he'd been carrying. That's when the full picture finally came out. The 2 years of comments, the screenshots, the slow deliberate isolation. He told me he'd stop telling me because he didn't think I could fix it. And he didn't want to watch me try and fail. And somewhere in there, he'd started believing the things they said about him were just true. I'm not going to pretend the road after that night was simple, because it wasn't. And I don't think it's fair to other parents to make it sound easier than it is. Eli spent time with a mental health team who specialized in adolescent crisis care before he came home. And honestly, that piece mattered enormously. Having actual professionals involved, instead of just me trying to handle something this serious on my own, with good intentions and no training. We started weekly therapy after that, both individual sessions for him and eventually family sessions for both of us together, because I needed to understand how to actually show up for him differently. Not just love him harder in the same ways that hadn't been reaching him. This part I do not regret being loud about. I met with the principal with his counselor, brought printed screenshots of messages Eli finally felt ready to show me. The school's response wasn't perfect, I won't pretend it was, but it did result in real consequences for the boys involved, and a genuine, if overdue, review of how the school handled reported bullying going forward. Eli switched to a different school for his last year of middle school, a smaller one, and I watched him, slowly, not all at once, not in some clean movie montage way, start coming back. He didn't sing again for almost a year. The first time he did, quietly off-key, doing dishes because he thought I wasn't listening, I had to leave the room so he wouldn't see me cry. Recovery wasn't linear. There were setbacks, a bad week here, an anniversary of that night that hit harder than either of us expected. We learned slowly what actually helped, him having language for what he was feeling instead of performing fine, me learning to ask better questions than, "Is everything okay?" which I now understand is far too easy for a struggling kid to answer with a lie. Eli's 14 now, in high school, and doing genuinely well, not perfectly, nobody's story wraps up perfectly, but well. He has 2 close friends again. He still goes to therapy, by his own choice now, not because I make him. He started a small club at his new school for kids who've dealt with bullying, something he came up with entirely on his own, which honestly tells me more about who he is than anything that happened to him ever could. I think about the year I spent not seeing what was happening, and I don't say that to punish myself publicly. My therapist and I have worked through a lot of that guilt already. I say it because I think a lot of parents watching this are exactly where I was, asking the question, getting the reassuring answer, and moving on, because that's easier than pushing further. I understand that impulse completely. I lived inside it for 2 years. What I'd tell any parent now is this. The question that actually works isn't, "Is everything okay?" It's asking specific things. Who did you sit with at lunch today? What happened in the group chat this week? Has anyone said anything that stuck with you? Specific questions are harder to perform fine through. And watching for the quiet, not just the tears, the disappearing hobbies, the stopped singing, the friend names that quietly stop coming up, because by the time a kid is crying in front of you, they've often already been carrying this alone for a long time. Eli knows I'm sharing this. He actually asked me to, because he wants other kids going through something similar to know it's possible to come back from this, and he wants other parents to ask better questions than the ones I asked. If you're a parent watching this, ask the specific questions. If you're a kid or teenager watching this, and something like this is your reality right now, please tell someone, even if you don't think they can fix it. You don't have to carry it alone. And it does get better than it feels like it can right now.